The EVERGETINOS, a complete text. Book 3, Hypothesis 1. That one should not condemn anyone on the basis of suspicions, or in general give any credence to suspicions. A. From the life of St. John the Merciful. 1. At that time a certain monk was going around Alexandria with an attractive girl in tow. A number of church people saw him dragging this girl around with him and denounced him to the Blessed John for allegedly giving scandal to many by keeping company with her. Led on by their words and supposing that they were motivated by divine zeal to make this accusation, the patriarch ordered that the monk and the girl be severely thrashed and then confined in separate dungeons. After the order had been carried out and the monk and the girl had been imprisoned, the monk appeared by night to the patriarch in a dream, showing him the wounds on his back and saying to him with simplicity and guilelessness, "All right then, do these wounds please you, master? Believe me, at least this one time even you have been deceived as a man." As soon as he awoke from sleep, St. John had the monk released from custody and sent for him, though on account of his many wounds the monk was scarcely able to walk. The saint looked at him closely and recognized him as the monk whom he had seen in his sleep. Wishing to find out whether the monk had in fact received as many wounds as he bore during his appearance in the dream, the patriarch ordered him to uncover his back, after covering his loins with a towel. But when, by divine providence, the towel came undone, and his private parts were exposed, everyone saw that he was a eunuch, although on account of his youth, he had been previously not been able to avoid every suspicion. The patriarch immediately removed the monk's accusers from their ecclesiastical offices, suspending them for 3 years. He offered a fitting apology to the God-loving monk and asked his forgiveness for the sin that he had committed against him in ignorance. But, he told the monk, "I cannot approve of the fact that, since you are a monk and appear so young, you go around cities indiscreetly with a woman in tow, thereby scandalizing many people." The monk replied with due respect and humility, "Blessed be the Lord, Master. I assure you that I am not lying. Not many days previously, I was in Gaza, and while I was on my way from there to venerate Saints Kyros and John, this girl met me toward evening. She fell at my feet, begging me to let her accompany me, since she wanted to become a Christian, for she was a Jew. Fearing the condemnation of God, who has commanded us not to despise any of his little ones." It's Matthew 18, verse 10. I listened to her plea and allowed her to accompany me. Moreover, I was confident that, given my physical condition, it would not be easy for the enemy to tempt me. After arriving there, that is, at the Church of the Holy Unmercenaries, and fulfilling my vow, I catechized her in the Christian faith. Ever since then, in simplicity of heart, I've kept her with me, supporting her by begging alms. I'm eager to settle her, if possible, in a convent." After hearing this story, the Blessed Patriarch exclaimed in astonishment, "My goodness, how many hidden servants of God there are, even though they remain unknown to us." He immediately offered the monk 100 numismata as a gift, but the latter declined to accept it, replying, "If a monk has faith, he has no need of money. If he loves money at all, he is bereft of faith." After saying this, he kissed the patriarch's hand and departed. 2. Then the patriarch advised those who were with him to avoid altogether making accusations against monastics, and he recalled an admirable remark made by the ever-memorable emperor, St. Constantine, who rejected accusations which had been lodged against certain bishops at the First Ecumenical Synod of Nicaea, saying, "If I came across a bishop or a monk committing fornication, I would take off my royal mantle and place it over him, lest anyone should see him sinning." The patriarch continued, "He knew well that the flaws of such people, monks and bishops, when disclosed to the masses, not only bring into disrepute ecclesiastical offices which are worthy of honor and respect, but as well become a great incentive and pretext for those seeking to justify their own vices with such bad examples. Henceforth, keeping the case of the eunuch monk vividly before the eyes of his soul, the admirable Patriarch John paid no heed to the slanders against Vitalios the Great. And what happened to Vitalios? This Vitalios was previously a monk in the monastery of Abba Seridos. Leaving his monastery, he went to Alexandria, where he lived in a way which, though it made him an easy target for slander, was nonetheless very pleasing to God, as events ultimately proved. When Elder Vitalios arrived in Alexandria, he was already over 60 years old. He worked assiduously to draw up a list of all the prostitutes in the city's brothels. In the meantime, he took up paid employment, for which he agreed to a wage of 12 oblio per day. He used 1 obolos to purchase lupines, a legume, which he would eat after sunset. He would also go each night to one of the prostitutes on his list to give her the rest of his money, saying, "Take this money, and please, for my sake, keep yourself unstained by sin tonight." He would stand the whole night long in a corner of the room where the woman plied her trade, reciting psalms without interruption, making prostrations, and stretching out his hands in supplication to God for her sake until daybreak, at which time he would depart, adjuring the woman not to divulge this deed to anyone. However, one of the women in question had the audacity to despise the oath that she had sworn and to reveal the elder's secret deeds. At his prayers, she was immediately possessed by a demon, in order that none of the other women would dare thereafter to disclose anything of his life. The elder had only one goal in mind: to save the souls of these sinful women. As for people who wagged their tongues against him, he prayed that God would forgive them the sin of slander. His habit became the occasion for the salvation of many. For when these women saw the elder's all-night vigils, his unceasing chanting of the Psalter, and his constant prayer that they would repent, they were moved by this to desist from their shameful acts and become concerned about chastity. Some of them contracted lawful marriages, others remained as they were, but abandoned their evil profession, while others completely renounced the world, choosing to enter the monastic life. At any rate, as long as he was alive, no one had any idea of his secret and God-pleasing way of life. On one occasion, as he was leaving the room of the leading prostitute in the city, he ran into a licentious man who was entering the same establishment with the intention of paying her to sin with him. The man was angry at the elder, supposedly out of disgust for him, and struck him a blow on the neck with all of his might, saying, "When will you stop committing these foul acts, you mocker of Christ?" The elder replied, "Wretched man, you are going being struck with a blow so loud and so painful that practically the whole of Alexandria will gather at the sound of your cries." After some time, this man of God departed to the Lord. He was living in a rural area called Heliopoli, in a tiny cell which he had built for himself. He had there a small chapel provided by his neighbors, in which he frequently celebrated the divine services. Vitalios died without anyone knowing about it. At the very time of his repose, a demon, in the form of an ugly Ethiopian, appeared to that depraved man who had slapped him. The Ethiopian struck this man so heavily and loudly on the cheeks that the noise could be heard some distance away. And he said to the man, "Take this blow, which the monk Vitalios has sent you, as he foretold." At once the hapless man became demonized, began to roll around. And almost all of the inhabitants of Alexandria rushed to see, just as the saint had foretold. The man, regaining consciousness after some time, rended his clothing, and rising, ran quickly to the saint's cell, crying out, "Have mercy on me, O servant of God Vitalios, for I have sinned greatly against God and against you." In the meantime, a goodly crowd ran after him. When they arrived outside the elder's dwelling in front of everyone, the demon threw the man down, convulsed him, and then left him. On seeing this, some of the bystanders went into the elder's cell and found the saint on his knees, having committed his soul to God while at prayer. Then, stooping down to the ground, they observed that he had written the following words there, quote, "People of Alexandria, judge nothing before the time, until the Lord come." 1 Corinthians 4:5. The demonized man then confessed before everyone both what he had done to the righteous man and the prophetic words that he had heard from the latter, which had just now been fulfilled in him. The patriarch was immediately informed about all of these events. He arrived on the scene accompanied by all of his clergy. When he had read the writing on the ground, he exclaimed after a short while, "If I had given any credence to the words of the slanderers, that loud blow would have struck my own person." A whole multitude of former prostitutes whom Vitalios had led to repentance then assembled for the funeral of his precious body, on which they placed sweet spices, carrying in it a procession with tapers, fervently lamenting having been deprived of that teaching which used to flow from him to their great benefit. They recounted his life, how he had never entered their rooms with any evil intent, and how none of them had ever seen him even touching one of the women with his hands, let alone sleeping beside her. In response to those who reproached them for keeping silent about his virtues and thereby causing scandal to many, the women brought up in their defense the injunction which he had laid on them, relating the incident of the woman who had disobeyed him and had been tormented by a demon for her chastisement. As for the man who had struck the saint and was in turn struck by the Ethiopian, he never ceased thereafter from visiting the tomb of the blessed Vitalios, which proved to be a treasury of many miracles, and commemorating him, according to the custom, by the recitation of the Psalter. A few years later he was tonsured a monk at the monastery of Abba Seridos and entrusted with the cell of St. Vitalios. On account of his great faith in him, he lived in silence there until his death. Patriarch John gave great thanks to God for not allowing him to say or think anything unworthy of that blessed and ever-memorable soul, while many inhabitants of Alexandria, who were all too ready to condemn others, mended their ways and unlearned this wicked habit. The patriarch told some of them, "Brethren, you should guard against being quick to condemn, for once, when I was reading the life of one of the great fathers, I came across the following very beneficial story. This is how it goes. 3. 2 monks arrived in the city of Tyre to perform some errand. As one of them was passing by a certain place, a harlot named Porphyria followed him, crying, 'Honorable Father, save me as Jesus Christ saved the harlot.' Without regard to people's suspicions, he took her by the hand, in full view of many, and departed with her through the middle of the city. A rumor was immediately spread abroad that the monk in question had taken Porphyria as his wife. As Porphyria passed through cities and villages with him, she happened to come across an abandoned infant, which she lovingly took up and carried with her in order to rear it. A little later on, some Tyrians came to the place where the monk and the erstwhile prostitute were dwelling. And when they saw that Porphyria had a child in her arms, they began to laugh and jeer at that courageous man, saying to Porphyria, 'You truly succeeded in your purpose. You have borne a beautiful child by this monk.' Upon returning to Tyre, they put a rumor out everywhere that Porphyria had given birth to a child by the monk, to whom it bore an amazing resemblance. People are always ready to give credence to suspicions, and especially when such people are corrupt and wicked and can thus find grounds within themselves for believing such suspicions. They assume without further ado that other people are just like themselves and readily slander other individuals, both because they take pleasure in such suspicions and slanders, and as well because they wish to have others as accomplices in evil. So eager are they to evade the reproaches of their own consciences. That honorable monk tonsured Porphyria a nun, and clothed her in the monastic schema, changing her name to Pelagia, and entrusting her to a convent that she might lead the monastic life. However, after some time, having foreknowledge of the day of his death, he took her along with him, and they returned to Tyre, accompanied by the child, who was now about 7 years old. It was immediately banded around that Porphyria and her husband, the monk, had returned to the city. When the monk subsequently fell ill and was at the point of death, a great many of the inhabitants came to visit him. Under the eyes of all, he ordered a censer full of lighted coals to be brought to him. Taking the censer, he poured the coals onto his chest and said within the hearing of all, "Blessed be the Lord, who of old preserved the bush unconsumed. May he be my witness that just as the caustic power of this fire is not burning my clothes, so also I have never touched a woman in all of my life." When they heard this, they were all astounded and glorified God, who, through such miracles, is wont to glorify openly those who serve him secretly. After doing and saying these things, the monk commended his soul into the hands of God. And for this reason, my spiritual children, I urge you all, as I said before, not to be quick to condemn, but to guard yourselves as much as possible from this sin. B. From Abba Isaiah. Brother, if you wish to obtain something that you need, do not grumble against your brother, thinking, "Why did it not occur to him to give it to me of his own accord?" But say to him with candor and simplicity, "Do me a favor and give me this item because I need it." This is what holy purity of heart is. For if you do not say what you want, but grumble against your brother and reproach him in your heart, you are the one at fault. C. From St. Maximos. One who busies himself with the sins of others, or who condemns his brother out of suspicion, has not yet begun to repent, and does not seek to know his own sins, which are in truth heavier than a quantity of lead weighing many talents. Nor does he realize why it is that a man becomes slow of heart, loving vanity and questing after falsehood. For this reason, as one foolish and walking in darkness, he disregards his own sins and becomes preoccupied in his imagination with the sins of others, whether they really have occurred or he merely suspects that they have. D. From the Gerontikon. 1. A certain brother who trusted his suspicions and was beset by the demon of fornication went to an elder and said to him, "Those two brothers are sinning with each other." The elder realized that the demons were mocking him. Wishing to reprove him, he sent for and summoned the brothers who were being slandered. When they arrived, he looked after them, and when night fell, he spread out a rush mat for the two brothers, covering them both with a single blanket, saying, "The children of God are holy." After calling for his disciple, he ordered him to fetch the brother who had spoken against the two monks in question and to shut him up in a nearby cell. "He himself has this very passion in his soul," said the elder, "and this is why he entertains the same thoughts about others." 2. Abba said, "It is written, 'Bear witness to what thine eyes have seen,' Proverbs 25:7. But I tell you, even if you examine something by your own hands, do not bear witness. For a certain brother made a fool of himself in just this way by harboring evil suspicions against one of his brothers. One day he saw him sinning with a woman, as he supposed. Perturbed and exceedingly agitated by this, he went and prodded them with his foot, saying, 'Stop now, how much longer will you carry on like this?' Well, lo and behold, what he found were 2 bundles of wheat, one on top of the other. This is why I told you that even if you examine something with your hands, you should not be quick to reprove." 3. An elder said, "Do not make any accusation against your brother in your heart about anything whatsoever."